All right, so we will continue with our elements of art. And the next one I want to talk to you about is space. And space refers to the emptiness or area between, above, around, below, and within a object. So you can see on this example of this sculpture right here, we've got positive and negative space. The positive space would be the sculpture itself. And then our negative space is all of the areas that create this negative void throughout. And the negative space can be just as dynamic as the positive space. So we'll take a look here. Here again is another two sculptures. We have the Stonehenge here. This is a sculpture that was created by these massive stones. They are set upon one another and holding each other in balance as well. And this sculpture here, you actually walk through. So you're able to walk through all of the negative space and become one with the sculpture. And then down at the bottom, we've got Isabel, which is a driftwood sculpture of a horse. And you can also see the positive and negative space in this. And the negative space is kind of, I think, helping represent the muscle structure of the body. And then space can also be within two-dimensional works of art. So here we're talking about background, middle ground, and foreground. And a way to show space in a painting is if you have people in the front, which would be your foreground, and then you have a person in the back towards the back of the painting, which is my background. I would create him a little bit smaller towards the back. This is going to help show distance between the people. They're going to look larger closer and smaller further away. But we know that if they were standing right next to each other, they're going to be similar sizes. So that's a way that you can show it in paintings. And here's another example, even these houses here. The houses that are more in the foreground, the front of the picture, are closer, larger. The houses that are in the middle ground are a medium size, and the middle ground is kind of the middle of your paper. And then the houses here in the background or off in the distance are much smaller. But we again know that if they were all next to each other, they would be relatively the same size. So that helps show distance in a two-dimensional work of art. Then we have color, and that is an element that is derived from how light is reflected and how your eye sees those reflections. So here we have hue, and hue in art is the name of the color that you're using. So you would use red, that would be the hue. So if you're looking for that name of the color, it would be red. Then we have value, and value is showing lightness or darkness of a color. So within a color, it can change. If you look here in the corner, we've got red, but then we have pink. Now, pink is a value of red. What did we do? We add a little bit of white to that pink, and that gives us value. Intensity is talking about the brightness or the dullness of a color. And you can kind of see this here in this orange. The orange has a little hint of brown to it, which creates more of a dull color, especially next to the yellow-orange right next to it that's popping off. So when you change the intensity, it can make your eye want to move and look at specific spots and help the overall picture of where you want the eye to move. Then we have our primary colors. Our primary colors, this is a color scheme now. Our primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. These are the three most important colors you will find in the color wheel. And the reason for that is because they make up all other colors. But we cannot mix two colors together to get either red, yellow, or blue. Then we have our secondary colors, which are green, purple, or violet, I should say, and orange. And the way you get a secondary color is by mixing two primary colors together. So you would take the equal amounts of red paint and yellow paint, and that will give you orange. Then value value here describes darkness or lightness of an object. So when you are creating an image, if you want it to look a little bit more realistic or have a little bit more depth, you would change the value within your picture. You can see that here even in his hair. Where the light is hitting his hair, in some spots it's a little bit lighter, and then it maybe has a little bit of a shade next to it to help show depth, value, and even more of a realistic look. Here again we have some more values, so you can see it is a gradation or a scale between white and black. You can also change value with colors, and that's what we see here in the Old Guitarist. We have many different shades of blue, going from light blue to navy blue and everything in between. Texture. This refers to how something feels or how you would imagine it would feel. So you can either have texture that you can actually feel with your hand, or you can have something called implied texture, where the artist creates this texture just by drawing different lines, shapes, patterns. So in Starry Night, if you were to actually go up and feel Starry Night, Van Gogh paints so thick that you can actually feel the texture on the canvas. And then in ceramics here, you can actually see and feel the texture. All of these coils here at the bottom are creating this texture. It's not smooth, but it's smooth in some areas. And then you can also see this found art sculpture where there's actually different textures combined and created in this collage to create a different texture. So the last thing before I sign off on this video is I have a short video talking about value, and I wanted to share that with you. This is not my video, but I thought it's a pretty good description of what value is.
Today's video is going to be very shady. Get it? Shading. We're talking about shading today. How to art. Hey Doodlebugs, it's Mary. Let's talk about shading with pencil, because shading can add so much to your drawings. You can create contrast, you can make characters pop and things recede, you can have things look like they're far away or up close, you can create textures, all sorts of fun stuff. And there's a handful of different ways you can shade with pencil. Now my last video was all about drawing supplies, different kinds of pencils and papers. So for now I'm going to use an HB pencil, but you can use whatever you feel comfortable with. I don't recommend mechanical pencils for this part, but if that's all you got, if you're trapped in a 100-foot well and all you have is a mechanical pencil and a piece of parchment paper made from the flesh of somebody who fell down there years before you did, go for it. So the most basic part about shading with pencil is pressure. Light pressure gives you light lines, hard pressure gives you dark lines. Now to get better at shading, you gotta practice controlling that pressure. You can do this by making a value scale, or a shady bar. I prefer shady bar. To make a value scale, draw a long rectangle and divide it into about 5 or 6 different boxes. Pick one end to be your light end and one end to be your dark end. The box farthest to the light end is going to be the lightest value that you can achieve, which just so happens to be the tone of your paper. Got it! That box is done. Now the box farthest to the dark end is going to be the darkest tone that you can achieve. Shade that in. This isn't coloring in the lines, so if it's a little sloppy, that's okay. Put a lot of pressure to the paper without breaking your pencil or tearing the paper, and make the darkest value that you possibly can. You might have to take a couple passes at it. So you got your lightest end and your darkest end. Next, you're going to fill in the next boxes so that it looks like a bar going from light to dark. One tip I recommend is start by shading in the second lightest box and shade in all the middle boxes with that. Then move to the third lightest tone and make it a little bit darker, and so on until you have a nice even gradient. Practicing this value scale is a great way of getting used to shading and what kinds of pressure you need. You can also try blending the shades together nice and smoothly. It's something to work on when you're bored. Hatching. It's not just for dragons. Hatching is using a...
And then the rest of the video we can see at another time. we can go into hatching, but we don't necessarily need to learn that this week. So those are some basic explanations of what all of the elements of art are. And what I plan to do with the rest of our time in class is we will learn a little bit about some color schemes. And I can show you just briefly. I thought I had it up, but I didn't. What a color scheme is. So if we look at color scheme in art, let's just say, we can take a look at some of the basic color schemes here. So a color scheme basically is a group of colors that you choose to create your artwork with. A lot of times these color schemes are going to be colors that naturally go well together. So we've got some basic color schemes. We've got primary, secondary, and tertiary color schemes. A tertiary color is like a blue-green or a blue-violet where you mix one primary and one secondary color together. Then we have a warm or cool color scheme. We have a color scheme called monochromatic, which is tints and shades of one color. And then down here it says color harmonies, and these are basic color schemes. So we've got our complementary color scheme, and that's two colors that are directly opposite from each other on the color wheel. What these two colors do is they complement each other. They create this vibrant color, but they don't necessarily fight with each other. They work really well together. Then we have an analogous color scheme, and these are 3 to 5 colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. I always call these buddy colors. So it might be, an example here is blue-green, green, and yellow-green. So they all have green in common. Then we have a triadic color scheme, but I'm going to skip down. There's a couple more. We have a split complementary, so it gets pretty intense with the color schemes. But the one I was looking for more, and I maybe talked about it, this is monochromatic, where you have different shades of light to dark with one color scheme. So when we go into class on Thursday, we'll talk a little bit more about color schemes, and then we'll go over our assignment for the hands-on activity. Make sure, once you've watched this recording, that you please send a summary.